Movies are often a way for us to escape reality, but sometimes they teach us about real people. Tonight, it's Biopics on Real to Real Talk.
Film is a medium that transports. All I have to do is pop myself in front of the TV to watch a movie, and I can just enjoy it, whatever place the film takes me to.
Movies have always been an escape. It gives you a whole new world to be in.
I have a rekindled love affair with movies.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Real to Real Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and it's time once again to talk movies. Joining me, as always, are the other Real to Real talkers, Susan Chisholm and Paul Britton. Team, tonight we're going to sort of immerse ourselves in some reality as biographical films here this evening.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be awesome, because it always is.
Biopics,
indeed. Biopics is our topic because as part of this particular discussion today, we are going to look at a biopic that came out just this past weekend as we look at a film called Respect, the biographical film about the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. So we'll look at that as part of our main topic here tonight. So as we get started, guys, when I think biographical films, to me, one of my first thoughts is, well, they're kind of talky. So I'm really interested to see what some of our favorites might be.
They usually are very talky. Yes, there's a lot of talking about people in their lives.
Yeah, lots and lots and lots.
The thing about biopics is it's really easy to make one that's good. Okay. It's not very easy to make one that's great. Like the thing for me that separates the good ones from the great ones is its story. Like, you've got to have a compelling story.
Sure. Well, that's why I think some of the most successful biopics are films that take a look at a particular portion of someone's life. You know enough about them to fill in the blanks, but it looks at a segment of someone's life. And I think that's where, at least for myself, I find that's somewhat what some of the most successful biopics do.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, not only it makes you want to learn, like, even more. I personally didn't know a lot about our lead biopic for tonight. I'm just gonna say that I was pretty dumb, ignorant in terms of, like, who this person, who Aretha Franklin was really. I mean, of course, we know a little bit, but, like, afterwards I was like, I just wanted to find out, like, okay, what part of this was real life, what part of this was not, what more can I learn about her? So that to me is what it does. It makes you want to continue on.
Yeah, it does make you dig deeper, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so as we begin our look at biopics, I know that over the course of my fandom of films, in the years since I really started paying attention to movies I watch and make decisions about the kinds of movies I like to watch, I am a big fan of biographical films. And they tend to be, depending on the subject, they tend to be epic in scope. I think of, for instance, a movie like The Wolf of Wall Street, a look at the life of Jordan Belfort. If you read his book that the movie is based on, you get a far bigger picture in terms of his overall life. But the film, of course, focuses on his time as a trader and the, insanity of his choices. And so I was thinking about, what are some films that really stood out to me? And I thought to myself, yeah, that is biographical. You don't always think about certain films as being biographical until you really sort of take a closer look. And so what I'd like us to do is simply share, some of the biographical films that we're fond of, and maybe talk a little bit about why they hold a place in our hearts. And so I've already thrown one out. We don't have a specific number. We'll just sort of talk through and get some ideas from all of us, as to what kind of biographical films you like. So Paul, why don't you get us started, and we'll share some thoughts.
So another one that so you threw out two things. So I'll do one at a time. The first one is that you mentioned was something that tells a story, but you don't really even know. You don't even think of it as a biopic. And Catch Me If You Can is a great example of a movie that is a biopic. I don't remember the guy that Leonardo DiCaprio plays, but it's the biopic of that guy. But I mean, it's just such a crazy story. It feels like you're like almost watching a heist movie, like a version of a heist movie, where somebody's stealing a life, and it's compelling like that.
Right.
That's the height for me of biopic hidden in just a bonkers, amazing story.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So. Did everybody freeze? Okay, sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
I was just looking down at my list.
I was like,
yep.
So I'm gonna probably bring one that's a little bit different. So we're talking about historical figures, but of course, everybody in their own way is a historical figure, right? So one of the biopics that really stood out to me was Ford versus Ferrari. Because it tells a story about Carroll Shelby and just kind of the stuff that he kind of went through with heart conditions and everything, and like how everything came to be. Because like for me, that's interesting because I grew up with this, my family was about cars and it was about racing, like so it was kind of neat to learn about the whole other sides of things that I wouldn't have necessarily even cared to learn. Sorry, I know that sounds terrible. That's a good one. Check it out.
No, that's a good one. I must say I sat here when you said it and thought, oh, I didn't think about that as being a biopic. But I mean, it talks about real life figures, and I was just so taken by the racing. So,
the car goes circles
really, really fast.
Car circles.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the thing is I kept going through this list. I was like, man, there's a lot more biographical films here that I could probably talk about. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna pull out some obscure ones. I'm a big fan of true crime, and so when a movie like Black Mass comes out, which is Johnny Depp portraying Whitey Bulger, who is one of the most notorious criminals ever in organized crime in the Boston area, South Boston. It's a menacing performance. It's a wonderful film. Not everybody felt that way, but again, it's the story of someone who is, when you watch it and you go, man, this person is like, they're real. Like, this is what they did. That to me is one of the things I love about these kinds of films is it transports you into their lives safely, and still with the ability to make you go, ooh, man, wow, they were evil. And so that's another one that lands on my list as a favorite of biographical style film is Black Mass.
Goodfellas would be another one in that vein too. But the other thing that you mentioned is a good way to go if you're creating a biopic, just pick an aspect of a person's otherwise super large life, and Lincoln is the classic example of that, where it's just like you could do so much with Lincoln, but just taking the need to pass these two amendments and and how he wrangled the votes. It's super compelling. Fantastic portrayal of Lincoln. That's the other fun thing about biopics is that you can even just create a mediocre biopic, but man, the Academy is definitely going to throw you the Oscars, the Academy Awards are going to throw you a nomination if you do a good enough portrayal, no matter what kind of mess the movie is. So but Lincoln is not a mess of a movie. It's an amazing movie and well-deserved win for Daniel Day-Lewis. And that's a good example of just pick a little bit and then let everybody's knowledge of that person kind of build the rest.
Yeah, fill out the picture. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I kept kind of like half smiling because it's you guys have talked about it before and talked about how talky it is, and I'm just like, oh, I guess I'll have to watch it.
It really is great.
It's so good.
So I mean, I'm gonna do another one that I think that might surprise you guys because I am not a fan of country music at all, but especially old country music. So one of the first biopics that I can remember watching with my parents, I watched Coal Miner's Daughter, which was about it was starring Sissy Spacek, and it's about Loretta Lynn. And it's just like, wow, that's a that if you haven't seen it, that story is something fantastic, and fantastic not necessarily in a good way. It's sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. I think that was Tommy Lee Jones also, I think. Yeah. So yeah, it's I can say that I was a young person, small person when I watched it, and I don't think that it spurred me to research more, but I think if I watched it now, it probably would, but I don't know if I could watch it again.
It's a tough hang.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's a great example. For me, sometimes biographical pictures will feature people who kind of came into fame unexpectedly. They were sort of your everyman kind of person, and something occurred, good, bad, or indifferent, and that they were all of a sudden known in the media. Clint Eastwood recently directed the picture Richard Jewell, based on Richard Jewell, who was the center of controversy in relation to the bombing of the Atlanta Olympics. And just when I watch movies of that type, it's so easy to get carried away by wanting to yell at the screen, like, "What are you doing?" Or what were you thinking by saying things like that? And that's of course a hallmark of a good biographical film. Is, like I said, you get swept into it. And so I wanted to include a film that for me was about someone who, but for one event, would never have been a famous person, might never have been known. And so that's again, when I go back to loving films that are very talky and such, that's what these movies are. It's a sort of analysis through dialogue on who Richard Jewell was, what the story was of the event itself and the surrounding investigation. And so I find that to be a very compelling film that I've gone back to more than once, and I still manage to get frustrated at the guy, because it's like, why would you? I don't know if you guys have seen it, but like, why would you do the things you did?
Okay.
You're only making the investigation harder on yourself when it's pretty obvious you didn't do anything wrong. So yeah, very, very interesting film, and one I highly recommend.
So one of the other things that you mentioned up front was like it's oftentimes you end up with a person's life that is very epic in scale. And like some of the classic Hollywood epics are biopics. I mean, Lawrence of Arabia, Spartacus, Cleopatra, and more recently, like one of my favorites is Amadeus. I mean, it's just it's so good, so talky, and but it is music-y. So music-y and so fascinating. Just an absolutely, and the most amazing thing about it is Tom Hulce's portrayal of Mozart. First of all, it's impossible. Nobody knows. Who knows what he you have some descriptions and whatnot, but you could. It's impossible to know. So you can literally do anything you want with this character, and it's just he portrays it as someone who just absolutely is not of this time. Like just what are you doing with this character? But it's fascinating and compelling and fantastic. And so Amadeus is, just so high up on my biopic
nice
it.
list. Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna throw you guys for another curveball because I hate talky movies. And very recently, actually, I watched what I would consider at least a biographical esque movie. I watched The Social Network, which we talked about in my Susan Finally Saw segment. That was talky as fuck. But
mentioned,
somehow still kept me curious enough to be paying attention on it. So,
Sure.
that like like you guys have said, it draws you in, it brings you there, it keeps you there.
Yeah.
Because that's not easy to do when it's tough as fuck and you make me watch it.
Absolutely. I like biographical films that take a unique approach. The last one I wanted to bring in, at least as we go through this discussion, we could talk about this forever, is Rocket Man. I am a huge Elton John fan. I was reminded of it a few days ago. I was driving through town, and there's a sign up for an Elton John concert, farewell tour. I think he's been on a farewell tour for several years now. But
Decades.
I remember thinking how much Rocket Man was such a fun telling of his life through music, basically a musical throughout. And so whenever that approach is taken, it makes for a really great story. And other than the 13th Warrior, I really can't think of any other biographical films that I would want to include right now. So.
I am going to quickly talk about things you don't want to do when you're making a biographical picture. And things you don't want to do is you don't want the story to be just like hyper formulaic, which is a problem that kind of comes up with biopics right now, especially biopics about entertainers, where it's like, and this might be foreshadowing a little bit, where it's like difficult childhood, comes a star, has a hard time adjusting, gets into drugs. It's just like, and Rocket Man did a good job of being like, we're going to do something different to break up the monotony of that very well-known storyline. But also, you don't want to do a biopic where the person you're supposed to be profiling doesn't grow at all, doesn't learn anything at all, and absolutely nothing actually happens to them other than just walking through life. And The Irishman is a perfect example of that, where it's just like, what's happening? Why, this person goes nowhere, and you really, something has to, there has to be something that changes the person, and I think that's really important, and that's why it's kind of easy to do biopics, because that's it. So many famous people have that sort of moment where something changes their life for the better, and they make that turn, and you see it over and over again, and that's a compelling human story, and it feels very it just feels like, why did I don't I have a hard enough time being a good person. I don't and bettering myself. I don't need to watch 2 hours, let alone 3.5 hours of somebody not becoming a better person. Like
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I think I have a kind of a penchant for tortured people, because I was just going to bring up Beautiful Mind. Yeah, boy, that guy was rough. But yeah, a good biopic will definitely cause that tension and let you see it and feel it just as strongly as if you were there.
Sure.
And that one, I think, is one of the first ones that I can remember, because that's from like 2001 or like 2000, and I remember being younger when I watched it. I mean, younger than I am now, but like, and being like, oh, this hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know enough about the world to know, but like, yeah.
No, the movies like that they really draw you in, especially if they can make you feel what that individual was going through. That's one of the reasons that I think I love biographical films, is they take you on a ride and will sometimes really hook into you emotionally. Yeah. They can frustrate you. They can make you feel, elated. I think of a movie like Miracle, which really isn't just the story of the coach's life, but also the players. And, that I don't know that I'll ever lose my love for biographical films. And that leads us to our conversation on the biographical film we're going to take a look at here today. And that's the film that was just released this past week, Respect. It takes a look at the life of Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, directed by Liesl Tommy, starring Jennifer Hudson, and a cast of so many amazing people. A very awesome appearance by Mary J. Blige, and so many others. I am struggling to remember names.
Forrest Whitaker.
Thank you. That's the name I was looking for. Forrest Whitaker. Martin Wayans in an amazing performance. He made me shudder. This cast had so much to work with, and the film itself draws you in. And as we begin our talk about it tonight, as we take a look at this film and give our thoughts on it, one of the things that I'll start with is simply by saying that there's no doubt that Jennifer Hudson hit the mark as the Queen of Soul, especially when you consider the fact that she sang the entire soundtrack. It's her voice, and her talent really comes through. She does what Jennifer Hudson does, and that gives us a musical tour de force performance.
I'm going to start with that, actually, that you say that. So when I first saw the casting of Jennifer Hudson, I was like, are you sure? She's got some pretty big sparkly shoes to fill. Are you sure, Jennifer? But she did nailed it. I mean, just nailed it. I think that's something that is phenomenal. And I did feel that same kind of draw, that same kind of pull by her performance that you're expecting and you're wanting and you're searching for when you watch a biopics.
Sure.
Yeah. And I if you were just casting based on who can sing the songs, she's the obvious choice. I mean, there's nobody else that you would really even think of. Like, there's nobody. And so from a soundtrack standpoint, she definitely did everything she needed to do and then some. And certainly from getting a nomination for an Academy Award, she also did everything she needed to do and then some.
Sure, absolutely. But I have to say, that said, the performance that for me stole this movie was Sky Dakota Turner as young Aretha Franklin.
Interesting. Yeah.
In a situation where any one of these cast members could easily have, chewed the scenery, so to speak, Forrest Whitaker, I think, Martin Wayans, there was just something about that very straightforward and challenging performance for Sky Dakota Turner, who really, I'm just glad we got as many minutes as we did from her young life, because I found myself throughout the early portion of the film thinking, I hope we're going to see more of her childhood, because this performance is amazing. She's just a very talented young actor, and I'm excited to see what her future holds, because for me, she held some of the most compelling moments with, in terms of this entire film.
For sure. Yeah. And difficult too. I mean, dealing with themes and things that, no 10-year-old should have to deal with, but even as an actor, to be able to, understand what's going on and understand the emotional beats on those, really good.
Yeah. Audra McDonald as Aretha Franklin's mother, very few minutes, but so powerful. This is what I think this movie was built on, is minutes of powerful moments, or minutes of moments that just, it was a roller coaster. But I think for myself, what I had trouble with was there was a production aspect of it that I had an issue with. And then there was something in the way of the storytelling. You talked about that formulaic approach, Paul, and I don't want to take any more words from you, but I do want to say that I felt like when you take on the life of Aretha Franklin at 2 hours and 25 minutes, and you still feel like you have got to rush through all of these singular moments, the pacing really became a challenge for me to feel like I was getting immersed into it.
Right.
Yeah, that rushing I felt it too. There were moments where I was like, this doesn't have, it wasn't just rushing, it was just timing in general, because there were times where I was just like, we could be done with this now. But then there are spots where it was like, blah, 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 and we're done. And so it was kind of like, okay, we're moving on. Like that. Yeah. That kind of unevenness is definitely evident. And I was reading after, because you do, when you're famous, you get to pick whoever you want to play you. And Aretha Franklin actually handpicked Jennifer Hudson
Yes, she
to do
did.
her.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Yes, she did.
can you imagine being that person?
Well, I've already told Oscar Isaac that he's going to have to play me in my biopic. So, yeah. But no, yeah, this movie is a quintessential example of maybe you pick a thing, you know, a window, and you go for the window. And I understand that they picked the window, and the window was from when she was 10 until, you know, early to mid 70s, but that's still a pretty big window. And
Sure.
there's a lot that's going on, and we've seen it before. Yeah, and it seems mean and cruel, but I don't know what separates this movie from Ray and Walk the Line and Bohemian Rhapsody, and other than we get a greatest hits album of Aretha Franklin instead of Ray Charles or Johnny Cash or Queen.
Sure.
What's the
it follows the
story
formula
that we haven't heard before? Now, there were aspects of things that like, oh, I had no idea about that about Aretha Franklin. Like, oh my God, she had a kid at 12. Like, that's a big fucking deal. Like, and it's completely glossed over. And like at one point in the movie, she's like, are you telling me that I'm a bad mother? And it's like, well, maybe we just tell a story about how she was as a mother, because quite frankly, yeah, she was a bad mother. Like she was, but she was a 12-year-old mother. So of course she's going to be bad. Like, she's not going to have any idea how to relate to her children as children. It's just, it's impossible. And don't bring that relationship into the movie and then just be like, well, that's it. We showed you that happened and moving on.
I think we were being asked to make a leap that wasn't necessarily ours to make, because I don't know that we would have felt comfortable to make that leap and assume certain things from her childhood.
Right.
And that's where I feel the film had some challenges.
Right.
I mentioned a production standpoint. I was so looking forward to, and this again, it's because there's a formula. I was so looking forward to see what would they do these two songs. Would they do You Better Think, and would they do, of course, Respect. And when Respect lands in the middle of the film, the thing that was so jarring for me was that there was, I don't know if it was on purpose, but there was a leveling problem with how Aretha's voice was what was highlighted and the music was very muted. If you go back and you watch it, you'll notice that the sound on that scene, and it really brought it down for me, because of course that's a huge hit and that's a moment you look forward to. And it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's the scene where she's performing in Madison Square Garden, which is a big deal.
Right.
And if you're listening to Respect, you want to hear the horns, you want to hear and there was just something in the leveling of the music and the way they mixed that scene that I was like, this is not the soaring moment that I was hoping for, And so little things like that, I think, plagued the film for me, and in terms of our ratings, cost it some for myself, because I was taken out of it several times by things like that.
And if you're doing a movie biopic and you literally lift a line from Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, you either need to be self-aware enough about the fact that you're doing that and just give a total blatant wink to the camera, or you need somebody to go back, watch Dewey and Cox, and then watch your movie and say, "Oh, we need to change this line," because there's a line in Dewey Cox where where he's writing his song "Walk Hard," and like, but we don't even know the song. He's like, "Just follow me," and it's just like, and there was that exact line in Respect, and it's like, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Those couple of montages, though, I enjoyed those, where they're putting some. In fact, I believe there's a movie to be made on just the Muscle Shoals band and Aretha and their relationship. I'd watch that movie.
That's your movie. That's your Aretha movie. Absolutely. Yeah.
So as we do week to week, we have a taco-based rating system here on Reel to Reel Talk. A movie can get as many as 5 tacos. If you want to give it some extra love, you can throw on some guac. So, Susan, we'll start with you. Give us your rating for Aretha Franklin's biopic, Respect.
I'm kind of teetering on the verge of 3 tacos with guac or 4 tacos, because it did have a lot of moments that I was looking forward to. A lot of songs, a lot of music, and a lot of, life story. I'm gonna go with 4 tacos. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna be generous today.
All right.
Paul,
what about you?
I'm going with the just 3 tacos. It's the classic good, not great, biopic. It's a formula. It's not a bad formula, but it's still a formula. And so, there's nothing here that for me takes it beyond like, oh, it was so much better than Ray, or oh, it was so much better than, Walk the Line. It's good. And it does just enough to guarantee at least 2 acting nominations come Oscar time. So well done. Exactly what the Academy is looking for.
Yeah.
God save us.
Indeed. I'm curious because I know my pick for those 2 would be Jennifer Hudson and Marlon Wayans.
Right.
And yeah, their performances were stellar. That's going to keep my tacos pretty darn high. The guac is going to make up for the loss of some of the production aspects. And again, that formulaic story that was followed, but almost too quickly, really, really costed for me because I was watching this and just wanting more. But it's a good movie. I highly recommend it. I'm going to land on 3 tacos plus guac, because the acting really, really, and Jennifer Hudson's performance easily an Oscar-worthy performance. So that's our view of Respect. You can find it in theaters currently, and let us know what you think. Because again, we encourage you to go and watch and let us know what you think about the movies that we talk about here. So thank you so much, guys, for your thoughts on Bio-Pics and Respect. We're going to move on now to remind everyone that you can follow us on social media. On Facebook, you can go to our page, Real to Real Talk, as well as find us on Instagram. On Instagram, it is at Real to Real Talk. So make sure you follow us there for past show posters and to communicate with us there. Here on YouTube, thank you for joining us. Please make sure that you click that subscribe button and also click the notification bell so you know when episodes publish. You can find us here live on Tuesdays week to week, and just keep up with us on our social media to know what the times of the show are. All right, we'll move on to this week's segments. Paul, I'm just going to turn it over to you because I have a feeling you watched something weird.
I did, and I found a weird biopic to watch. It's the 2007 biopic of Bob Dylan called "I'm Not There," for which Kate Blanchett got a Best Supporting Actress nomination, because in classic biopic fashion, you play a real character, you're getting nominated. Play a real character that's not even your gender, doubly more likely so. This is a weird one. So there are 6 actors that play Bob Dylan. Mm-hmm. None of them actually play Bob Dylan, because Bob Dylan, the person, a character named Bob Dylan, at no point appears anywhere on the screen. It's the 6 actors each play more a personality that is attributed to Bob Dylan, or a character that is attributed to Bob Dylan. Poet, sort of wanderer, at one point in a sellout. There are these 6 basically personality types, and each is given a different name. Each is given a different period of time or story arc that's going on with Bob Dylan. The weirdest thing about this is, well, obviously you're trying to figure out, what's going on, because it's all intercut. You talk about taking the formula of biopic and just flipping it on its head. That's what I'm Not There is all about. I mean, the 6 stories are it's edited in such a way that they're all intertwined, with none of them connecting at all. Like it's just like hopping. So it does become disjointed. Another weird thing about it that you're just not used to about a biopic is, one of the things about a biopic, you go in knowing not everything that's happening actually happened. Like they're dramatizations.
Right.
This entire movie, because at no point are you ever introduced to Bob Dylan until the closing credits when you get to watch Bob Dylan singing a song, which actually is probably the highlight of the movie. But at no point do you really ever feel like it constantly feels like narrative and not real life. But there are shades of real life going on. Like, okay, so we know Bob Dylan was a huge Woody Guthrie fan and spent a lot of time in his early youth kind of traveling around trying to, he wasn't a hobo. And yet here we have like a 10-year-old African-American kid playing Bob Dylan using the name Woody Guthrie, traveling as a hobo and playing his guitar everywhere and actually going to visit a ailing Woody Guthrie in the hospital, which Bob Dylan did in 1961 when he was much older than 10 years old. Yeah. And so it's like there are factual nuggets, but you spend the entire movie like, wait, did any of this actually happen? Did some of it it's really weird. It's really weird, but it is interesting because of what it does to the genre. But it's all it almost feels like it's like it uses the device to just be able to say, well, we're not really going to tell you anything. And it's so to that extent, it kind of feels like it's just being like, yeah, like, here you go. No, this is Bob Dylan, but maybe not. It's like, oh, okay, sure.
Interesting. As you're talking about it, I know I've not seen it, but I recall, again, that whole notion of several cast members playing the role. And so it sounds, very different than what we're used to for biopics. And it fits right in the wheelhouse of what the hell did I just watch?
Free on Pluto TV. So if you want to spend 2+ hours to sit down and watch it, it's interesting. It's really interesting. I don't think I know anything about Bob Dylan, let alone anything I didn't know before, and I may know less.
Gotcha. As a result of this film. All right. Well, Paul, thank you for always bringing us some cool stuff. You can find out what the hell Paul's been watching week to week here on Real to Real Talk. And trust me, if you watch some of it, you're going to have to let us know what you think. That brings us to our next segment, which is Susan Finally Saw. Susan, what did you finally see?
So, as many of you know, but some of you new listeners may not know, or watchers may not know, I have a ridiculously long list of movies that I'm trying to catch up on, and I actually finally watched one off of my movie list. It was not great, in fact, at all. I watched Blue Valentine, which is it was from 2010. It has Michelle Williams and that guy whose name I can never remember. Ryan Gosling. Thank you. Hey girl, that guy. It's a movie that kind of goes back and forth between, because we're discovering that they're at the end of their marriage. It's a romance movie that they're at the end of their marriage, that they are trying to work through stuff, but it kind of flashes back to when they were at the beginning and in love and all that fun stuff, and it just kind of goes back and forth, and it's it's one of those things where it's just kind of like, what do I look at? Tell me where to look. For what should be a romantic or a romance movie, it wasn't very romantic, I don't think, myself personally. If either of y'all have seen it, maybe you can attest to that. Woohoo! I saw a movie that neither of the boys have seen. Fantastic. Don't bother.
Yeah, I'm telling you're not selling this to the point. Like, a lot of times, when you hit one I haven't seen, I will absolutely add it to my list and try to get to it as quickly as possible. This is not one of those times.
It's okay. Yeah, you
okay.
Missing much.
I'll pass you.
So yeah. Anyway, I checked one off my list with Blue Valentine. Yay.
Excellent. So the list has grown shorter by one. So thank you,
Went
Susan.
from here to here.
No, because people keep adding stuff. So it didn't.
Sure.
It went from here to here to here.
Oh, okay.
And with that being said, you can add to either Susan or Paul's list. If you have some form of weirdness, send it to us here on our social media. And if you have something you'd like to add that Susan might not have seen before, you can always send your suggestions to our social media in any way, shape, or form. All right, that brings us to this week's Real-Time Rewind, where I simply just like to remind folks about movies that are out there that you may or may not have seen. And if you haven't seen them, watch them. If you have, watch them again. I'm doing this month Obscure Thrillers, 1986, FX, Brian Brown. This is a movie that I remember fondly from back in the mid-'80s. And laugh all you want, Paul. I don't know what your thoughts are, but this is a movie where it's all about a guy who uses special effects to solve crime. And it takes itself a little too seriously. It has some entertaining moments, and it's a movie that I remember enjoying when I watched it. And so FX is this week's Real-Time Rewind. Check it out. You might find it under the title Murder by Illusion, but you'll likely find it under FX. And there you go. That's this week's Real-Time Rewind. I'm curious, Susan or Paul, have either one of you seen it?
No.
Yeah.
No, I have not.
So what year did this come out? You said 85? 86. Okay. So I was 12. So let's rewind. Movie is coming out, and I want to see it for no other reason than I believe it was rated R. Like, so I was 12. I was at the age where I just wanted to, like, I had finally gotten to see a rated R movie. And like there was no like rhyme or reason as to which rated R movies my dad would take me to, but this was one that I definitely wanted to see. That he definitely was like, yeah, no, we're not going to see that. And I later figured out that it was because it really just depended on whether he wanted to watch it or not. Like, so back in the day, if it was a PG movie, I got to have the say. But now that if it's rated R, it was entirely his discretion. Does he actually want to go see this movie? I wanted to see this movie so bad, and then it came out on HBO, and I watched it, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Although the cast, listen, here's the cast: Brian Brown, Brian Dennehy, Diane Venora, Jerry Orbach. So a lot of folks that you look at and you go, hey, I know that guy. Tom Noonan makes another appearance on the show because of this film.
Course.
And a very young Angela Bassett in one of her first roles ever, her movie debut as a TV reporter. So, don't let the cast fool you. It's just mediocre. So
it's interesting. It's interesting because like we could do a whole episode on this one of why did this not work? Because there's really,
especially because there were sequels. So
no, that's true.
Yeah, we don't have to.
No, I'm not saying we have to. I'm just saying
I will though. I will, Susan, add it to your list. So
no.
you got to suffer like we did.
Boo.
So.
Hard pass.
Yeah, you're right.
That is this week's Real-Time Rewind. Join us week to week as we share some of our own unique movie watching passions during our segments portion. Right now, we're going to jump into real quick reviews. We have a few we're going to talk about, and we're going to start with a film called Beckett. You can find it on Netflix. I'm not sure I want you to. So, which of us caught this film?
I did.
All right. So, Paul, I have a feeling we're going to disagree. So, why don't you share a few thoughts on Beckett?
This movie had the audacity, and I applaud it, to literally be three completely different and unrelated movies in the same movie. And God bless it. I swear to God, the first act is okay. This is like a sweet early love relationship movie, and something terrible happens, and one of the people needs to deal with the terrible thing that happens. And then it's like, no, that's not what we're gonna do. We're going to change the movie completely and make it into a man on the run movie that, forget everything that happened in the first act. This second act is man on the run movie. And then it gets to the third act. It's like, just kidding. We're going to make it a political thriller.
Yeah.
I have to say, the first act was okay. The second act was bananas fantastic, and that's the movie that I would have wanted to watch. Like, I needed like 5 minutes. Like, the intro should have been like 5 minutes, and then I needed just like the rest of the movie to be the second act. The third act was like pretty. Look, two things. So from the first and the third act have two problems. The first act has the problem of anytime you're in a movie and you're driving at night and someone asks you, "Are you okay?" You just stop driving. Like, if you find yourself in a movie and you're driving at night and somebody asks you, "Are you okay to drive?" You just say, "You know what? Maybe I'm not. We're going to pull off of the road and I'm going to take a nap." So that's mistake number one. And then mistake number two that the third act makes is if you still have like 40 minutes left in your movie and you reach your destination, don't go in, because something bad's going to happen. Like, you know, there's going to be a bad person in your destination that's going to make things way worse. So again, if you find yourself in a movie and you realize you've only been doing things for about an hour and you've got at least another 45 minutes to an hour to do more things, just, you know, find a chess game to play or something like that, because you don't want to just dive right into your location. But yeah, I love that second act. I loved when it was John David Washington on the run. That was fantastic.
I mean, yeah, this is a film that its first sin is that it wastes performance, or actually, it's not that it wastes performances by Alicia Vikander and John David Washington. It's that I don't think it draws enough of a performance from John David Washington. His performance never gets out of first gear, because he's basically panting heavily throughout the whole film. Sometimes because of love, other times because of other stuff, like running away from people shooting at him. So I don't know that we got. Maybe I love John David Washington, and I felt like this film was not a good vehicle for him. Totally agree on the 3-part approach to this film. It was a mess, in my opinion, how it all didn't come together.
Yeah.
And by the time it was done, it was one of those movies that we've talked about before, where we're like, why? You know,
Right.
It really had some. One of the only things I loved about this film was how it used language and without subtitles to create tension. The simple fact that he had no clue what people were saying was very well done.
Yeah.
Through the use of the way in which the Greek
lost in
language
translation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But every time something like that was going on and I was enjoying it, something outrageous happened, and it was like, okay, he's running again. All right. Then it got to the political intrigue, and I'm like, oh, God, can this movie just end? So
the political, it should never have shifted. Like, I forgive it for shifting from person dealing with tragedy to, oh my God, I have to be on the run now. The shift to political intrigue was. It was just like really, we need to change the movie that we're watching again. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. But I did love that second act. I disagree with you. I thought the vehicle itself, the whole movie, was not good for John David Washington, but that second act, that's what I want to see John David Washington doing.
Well,
like,
but
I want to see him running.
I sit down for the entire 3 acts. So
there you go.
With that said, for myself, I'm going to give it 2 tacos, no guac, for Beckett. Paul, your rating for this show?
I'm giving it 3 because I was thoroughly entered. Like, they totally brought me in during that second act, and I genuinely loved the second act. I loved it. Loved it. But then the political intrigue got to be like, meh.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. You can find Beckett on Netflix, and check it out. It's totally on you what you feel, and let us know. The second movie that we are going to talk about tonight is a documentary you can find on Hulu. It is called Home Room. Paul, I'm going to start with a question. What would you say how would you describe the style with which this documentary was put together? Because
there is a style for it. It's cinema verite, I think they call it.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I struggled with this film.
Mm-hmm.
I really did. I loved its intent.
Yes.
I loved where it wanted to go, but the cinema verite approach, I think, hurt it tremendously.
Tremendously. It had a really hard time finding a voice.
Yeah.
Then
just when you thought it did, it maybe was the voice. It was probably, I think they went with the most compelling voice in the film.
Right.
But then it was just, I don't know. There were some resolution pieces toward the end that I thought, well, yeah, of course that's going to happen, but I don't know that this is really a victory. The bottom line is this film is a look at an Oakland high school that is you don't need more than a few minutes to realize that they're following this senior class, and this is the COVID class.
Right.
It starts in 2019. They're going to graduate in 2020. So it's got a very strong underlying thematic approach to it. It's basically, activism in youth. And it's I loved reading about the movie and its subjects more than I enjoyed the film.
Agreed.
So the topic is very compelling, but I think the film is lost in how it was edited and the style that they chose to make it in. But still an important film.
I think the style is forgivable if the editing were better. You're 100%. So what they chose to do was make COVID the start of the third act, and COVID quickly spilled into the Black Lives Matter summer, and which is great, but that's COVID is your second act. Black Lives Matter is your third act. It's so obvious. I don't know why it didn't happen, because like the COVID aspect of it is like, okay, now we're into Black Lives Matter. And it's just like, dude, like that, the first two acts go nowhere. There's just no story there. And, and I think a lot of what they were trying to do, and I appreciate it, but it just doesn't work, is capturing the activism through social media is really kind of what they were trying to do. And so because of the constant TikTok posts and that sort of thing that they show, it's just like it never gets a footing. And, but like you said, important.
Very important. I find that the subject matter being what it was and the subjects being who they were, I think for someone of my age and my experience, I found it very hard to relate to them. And I really had to struggle with remembering, no, they're not just distracted. This is just the generation they are. And that's where I found myself doing more of a self-examination of me and my way of thinking. So it does get you to think for absolute, for sure. But from a film standpoint, again, I found myself reading a lot of things that were written about this topic and this film and enjoying that more. So I'm going to land at 2 tacos. I think the style choices and editing really hurt this film, but it is a strong 2 tacos, really good 2 tacos, because the subject matter is so important to this day. So I'm trying to separate the film from the topic. But
no, absolutely. And I agree with you. And I'm going to 2 tacos with guac, and I'm giving the guac because the third act really was strong.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing at the fact that we now have,
I love it. It's fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yeah. But the guac goes to a really strong finish. It's just unfortunate that it took so long to, I mean, it quite frankly, before COVID, it was boring. Like the movie, like it was just, it was like
a tough watch.
Yeah.
Tough watch. And I mean, from keeping my attention.
Right.
All right. The last film we'll talk about is one that I went in with low expectations because Ryan Reynolds is not one of my favorite folks. The movie is called Free Guy.
Okay.
And it is in theaters. And I was concerned because I thought, am I going to get all of the video game references and things of that nature that are part of this film? So Paul, given that you know what I was thinking, kind of set me up. What were you expecting as you approach this film?
Okay, so first of all, I need to say I am a Ryan Reynolds guy. His whole demeanor is exactly like I love it. It's fantastic. It brings me joy. Okay. So I was super excited about this movie, but I was super worried because I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I am not a gamer at all, like at all. Yeah. So Susan, did you get to see this one?
I did. I got to see this one.
Okay. So as the biggest gamer here, where were you?
I'm only a semi-gamer.
Is that fair?
I mean, I've been playing games since I was probably 10. So.
Right. So, and Sergio, like, would you say that she's a bigger gamer than you?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't say something that was wrong. Okay.
2 years.
So go ahead, Susan. Sorry.
No. Okay. So I saw the previews. I mean, and I'm like, I'm kind of guess middle of the road on Ryan Reynolds. I'm not, not a huge fan. I think he's funny, but there are times when it's like, okay, you can stop now. And I was looking forward to seeing how they took and made the video game world into a real world, or into a real world. That's what I was looking forward to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we going into now what we actually thought? Or
Yeah,
we
just brief thoughts overall. And I don't mind starting by simply saying that this movie surprised the hell out of me. I really loved it. It was fun. It was fresh. None of its scenes stayed too long. It moved at a pace that was comfortable. It looked frenzied, but it moved as a film very comfortably and fun. And I really enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of this film, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again, hopefully soon.
Yeah. I'm gonna say same, because like I was nervous about how they were gonna do the game stuff, and I was looking forward to see how they were gonna pull it off. Some of the way that they did stuff is exactly like some of the games that I've played. So like the little floating above the ground and spinning slowly kind of thing. Like that's really how it looks in games. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely how it looks. And there are games that I would love to introduce you guys to that I know neither of you would actually enjoy, but they're like, that's what you do. You go rob banks and you go run over people and you punch pedestrians in the face. Like, it's pretty close to that. If you guys want to play Grand Theft Auto, let me know.
Right.
But yeah, no, really though, I enjoyed the heck out of this movie. I loved it a lot.
Yeah. I started giggling about the 5-minute mark of this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't think I went more than 1 minute without at least having a giggle or, for the most part, there was a baseline giggle throughout the whole, and then there would be whole sequences where I was like literally just dying laughing.
Oh, yeah.
The sequence, like the training montage where he's leveling up, I was dying throughout.
Fantastic.
And then when he goes and helps the heroine, break into and then break out, and they jump out in their, in the motorcycle, and she's like shooting back. I just was dying because it was so like ridiculous and so much ridiculous fun. This movie is like right up there with me for like modern action films, with like Baby Driver and Atomic Blonde, where I absolutely just love them, and I want to like watch it again multiple times just because of how much fun it is. It is such a fun movie. God, I hope, and it did really well at the box office. I hope it survives. I hope it has good carryover to next week, and it's so good.
Even better though, one of our comments is
I know, I
from
see
our
that.
friend Nick.
Yeah.
It's already been approved for a sequel.
I'm in.
Another couple of years of eating right ahead in my future, because I definitely want to see a sequel. Again, there's so many, without giving anything away. If you haven't seen this film, you got to catch it, because you will be taken away not just by the story, but by the clever use of cameos, by the clever. This felt like, and I know there's a lot of animation in the film, but this felt like an animated movie.
Yeah,
come to life. This could have easily been done as a Pixar film, for example.
Sure.
And it would have been just as entertaining. But the fact that it was done the way it was done, I think was just amazing. So I'm excited to share, if you guys don't mind me leading off with our tacos, that this movie for me got a solid 4 tacos plus guac. And frankly, it's just not 5 tacos, because again, there are, I want more. I wanted more.
Yeah.
I wanted more. And so 4 tacos plus guac for me.
Okay.
Susan?
I love this movie. I'm gonna give it 5 tacos.
Awesome.
I love this movie.
Yeah, I can't give it 5 tacos. I want to give it 5 tacos, but like the reality is, it's not. It's it's 4 tacos plus guac. I mean, for me, that's exactly where it is. I mean, it's it doesn't lift the genre at all. It doesn't do anything that like lifts human spirit or anything like that. It's very corny at times. But 4 really damn good tacos and some super delicious free guac.
Free guac.
Free
Bonus
guac,
guac.
free guac, free guy, free guac. It's
Love
oh
it.
my god, yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I can talk my wife to go to the theater to see it because like she's very like hesitant to go out and do stuff, but like so I went and saw this with my son. I really want to get to go see it in a theater again. That's my goal. So.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing it again. And I got to tell you, guys, Jen, my wife, is very picky about films, and getting to watch it with her and hearing her laugh out loud the way she did. That's a tough road for films, and this one did it. So
Awesome.
just a great film overall. So, all right, well, guys, that brings us to the end of another episode of Reel to Reel Talk. Thank you both so much for all that you bring. I'm already looking forward to next week. I always say that, but I always mean it. For all of you who are watching, we thank you so much for doing that. Shout out to Nick for commenting a moment ago. Don't forget, here on YouTube, make sure that you click the notification bell for when our episodes land. Also, subscribe to the channel. Follow our social media. But more than anything, remember what we always tell you. You're awesome. You're amazing. And the world's a better place because you are in it. We will see you next time on Reel to Reel Talk.